Good morning guys, and welcome to my unboxing and review of the Master Grade Gundam Vidar. This is the first and potentially the only 2025 Master Grade release that we're going to be seeing in the States, at least, that I got for $66. Now I say that this might be the only standard Master Grade release that we see in the States this year because while the Barbatos Lupus was announced for a November 2025 release, that's in Japan. Now if you want to buy it from stateside and support stateside retailers, there's normally a couple month delay between when the kit comes out in Japan and when American retailers get it. So honestly, if you're buying it from American retailers, you shouldn't expect to see it until early 2026. So unless Bandai decides to shadow drop something late summer, early fall or something, this is probably the only Master Grade we're going to be seeing this year, which is a little unfortunate. So getting right into the box art here with the Vidar showing off two of its ranged weapons, the two Gundam-sized handguns that is firing off in opposite directions. You do get to see the other main weapons that it has, being the rifle on its hip and the burst saber on its other hip. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting kit. I know a lot of the appeal of the MG Barbatos, which I think this is based on, was the frame, and from what I've heard, because I haven't built it yet, it's in the backlog. I've had it there for forever. I just haven't gotten around to building it. It has this absolutely incredibly detailed, amazing frame, except for I think the shoulders are a bit problematic because they use C-clips to attach to the torso. They're very prone to breaking, so we'll see if they fix those in this kit, because that was a no problem ever since the Barbatos came out, like in what, 2018? So on the underside here, we have the full painted build of the Vidar down here, showing off the articulation gimmicks of how many of its iconic poses from IBO can be recreated, showing off the Gundam frame, which was one of the main draws of the MG Barbatos back when that came out, and it seems like it's also one of the main draws here. A highly detailed, very articulatable inner frame, because again, in IBO, the Gundam frames are an extremely core part to the kind of lore and story, so of course that's going to get a lot of attention here in this Master Grade. So again, showing off a bunch of articulation gimmicks with the AHAB reactor. You can show parts of it being exposed and stuff. It also looks like we're going to be getting a bunch of little piston details. We'll see if those are color separated in the box. If they are, that's going to be really cool. And of course, advertising that being a Master Grade, this has a working cockpit gimmick alongside a standing and sitting pilot figure of Vidar, as well as a bunch of marking stickers. Now, I don't have them right now, but I'm not going to be using the marking stickers that come in this kit because, as you can see, the Vidar's color scheme is a little bit darker. It is going to look pretty bad with the marking stickers on, so I have ordered water slides that, as of the time of recording, that it should get here in a couple of days, so it shouldn't impact anything with the video releasing, but you'll see a community post if that happens. Now, on the other side, we have a bunch of images here showing off the articulation and the accessories that come with the Vidar. So we have the Foot Hunter's Edge, which is a foot-mounted, I guess, kicking weapon. We have articulation gimmicks in the knees, showing off like an armor sled gimmick, I think, down in the bottom left. We have the handguns there for the Vidar, as shown on the box art. That seems to have some kind of blowback mechanism, so you can pose it having like just fire the handguns, which is really cool. Showing off the rifle of the Vidar and the burst saber. And this also comes with the mounts for the spare blades for the burst saber, so you can pose it having purged a blade and about to reload another blade or something, which is pretty cool. So we'll see that in the posing section. Oh yeah, you might also note that the lighting is a little bit different. I have gotten a ring light, so hopefully in future videos the unboxing section won't be tinted yellow with the Breaking Bad filter on it, because my room light is very yellow. So hopefully that works. I am trying to experiment positioning so you don't see the glare of the ring light in the box because of how kind of shiny Gunpla boxes are, but getting right into it, inside the box we get 7 bags of runners, which is a little more than usual, but with how, I guess, involved I'm expecting the frame to be, that isn't super surprising that we're going to be getting a bunch of extra parts. And of course we will also be getting this standard Master Grade style manual for the Gundam Vidar with, I think that's the Gjallarhorn emblem up there, showing off a cropped version of the box art. Getting into the manual then, of course we will be getting a bunch of lore information about IBO in general, about Tekkadan, about the Vidar itself, and the pilot interface that Vidar himself uses to control the Gundam Vidar, a modified version of the Alaya Vijnana. I'm not exactly sure. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that. But anyway, getting into the other side, of course, we will be getting a simplified build order of the Vidar, but it looks like it's going to be fairly straightforward. And of course, on the next page, we are going to be getting a parts list. We will be seeing a bunch of crossed out parts there. It looks like all of the crossed out parts are going to be on the frame runner, so presumably these are going to be reused from the Barbatos from, I think, 2018. And then the rest of it's going to be new parts for the armor, weapons, extra frame parts, etc. So getting into the build there, it looks like we will be building it looks like we'll be building the frame first and then layering the armor onto it after. And yeah, very much what I was expecting from a Master Grade IBO kit. Again, I haven't built the Barbatos yet, but yeah, this frame build is very, very involved, very complex, as you might expect, with how, I guess, highly detailed and important the frame is in IBO for Gundams. So you get essentially 2.5 full pages of just assembling the chest frame, and then you layer some armor onto it, which is half a page. So yeah, the frame is definitely the star of the show here. Then move on to the head, which isn't going to be looking super different compared to a standard Master Grade, not much more involved. And it looks like we will have a couple of options for applying stickers onto the head before assembly, so we'll take a look at that in a moment. Then you move on to the arms, which again, you build the frame first and then layer the armor on after. The frame doesn't look like it's going to be crazy involved compared to a typical Master Grade. So yeah, the torso might have been an outlier in terms of complexity there. Then of course you build the shoulders, connect all the frame together, and then layer the armor on afterwards. In the middle then, we are going to be getting a double page spread of information about IBO and the Vidar, with the mobile suit tracks in the post-disaster timeline, talking about the plot when the Vidar appears. Here is our color guide here in full color. You can pause if you want to use any of these colors in your build for both the pilot and the mobile suit. Of course, Bandai mentioning the one-step process of panel lining to make kits look better. And then getting into a bunch of details about the AHAB reactor, articulation, about the armor it uses. So yeah, just a nice full page spread here with an image of the frame, and then of course talking about the weapons and the pilot. Moving on, once you assemble the upper half of the mobile suit, you move on to the legs, and the frame for the legs does look like it's going to be more involved at least, which is nice. Definitely to facilitate a lot of the articulation gimmicks in the leg and things like that. So after you do that, of course, you will be mounting the armor, which yeah, compared to a lot of other kits, the IBO series has, I guess, more limited armor than a lot of other designs, which I think is a very unique part of it. But yeah, so moving on to the waist, now it doesn't look like it's going to be super involved, pretty typical for a Master Grade. And then of course you get into these very, very large side skirts that have the, I think it's the extra blades for the burst saber that just kind of clip on, that act as side skirts there. And then of course you assemble the lower half of the mobile suit, fully assemble it, and then move on to the backpack. So yeah, very standard stuff. And move on to the weapons. The rifle is unfortunately just going to be two halves that's sandwiched together with a couple of scope parts and barrel parts that clip on. A little unfortunate. That might leave a gigantic seam line, because they might have modeled it as just a detail line to panel line, but we'll see when the build is done. Then of course you build the burst saber, and then the handguns, which again is really cool that they have the blowback gimmick there to pose the Vidar like as in the moment that it's firing the handguns, so that's always cool to see. Then of course you get your decal guide here, and then of course a nice full page spread of the painted build on the back. So with the manual out of the way, let's get to the contents of the bags. Inside the bags we are going to be getting 19 runners, which is more than usual, but that's kind of a given how involved parts of the frame are for this build, as well as this foil color correcting sticker sheet. So this is going to be pretty much most of the usual suspects here. We are going to be getting metallic pink decals for the eyes. So it looks like we're going to be getting the option to either only put in the colors for the eyes and then potentially just shade around the outside in black, or the full normal, I guess, eye style of eye sticker where the black border is in the sticker for you. What looks like going to be metallic head cameras there. I think 8 is just going to be a foil reflective sticker that goes behind a part, but we'll see. 6, 7, and 9 all look like they're going to be parts for the AHAB reactor, I think. We are also going to be getting this somewhat small sheet of marking sticker style decals. I'm not going to be using these. Again, I'm going to be using the Delpy water slides, but I don't have them quite yet. I'm going to be getting them in a couple of days. But anyway, all that out of the way, let's get into the runners themselves. So these runners were printed in March of 2025, starting with runners A1 and A2 here. This is going to be from the Master Grade Barbatos with the runner design date of 2019. This is going to be many of our inner frame parts, as you can see there. Many recognizable parts for things like the torso. We see hand parts there. We see parts for the skirts, legs, etc. 2 of runner B, still from the Master Grade Barbatos in this primer gray, same color as runner A1 and A2. This is going to be duplicated parts for many parts for the frame for things like the legs and the upper thigh going into the waist. 2 of runner C2 with many additional frame parts still in that primer gray. This is also going to be including things like the thumbs for the hands, as well as parts for like power for replicating things like power piping details, which is nice to see. Runner D1 here in a plated silver is going to be all of our piston details, which is going to give a bunch of nice splashes of color while you articulate the kit, which is going to look really, really nice. If you've ever built something like the Master Grade Alex 2.0, this is in the exact same kind of plated silver color that that kit used for the forearm Gatling guns. Runner D2 then is going to be a bunch of auxiliary parts here in gold. Unfortunately, unlike D1, this is not plated. This is going to be in that kind of gross, I guess a little bit mustardy injection gold. It seems like they've improved it a little bit since the last time I've seen it. It looks a little better than normal, but still not great. I'm definitely going to be painting over this with just a gold Gundam marker or something. So Runner E here is going to be new for the Gundam Vidar, still in that primer gray. For a bunch of replacement frame parts that we are going to be using instead of the frame parts from the Barbatos, we see a bunch of parts here for things like the torso, the back skirts, the front skirts, a bunch of joint parts, the hips. We have an eye mask part here for the head. And then we have two sets of trigger fingers for the hands, because as you might remember, the Barbatos isn't exactly known to be using ranged weapons unlike this kit. This is the smoothbore cannon, but I don't think you use the trigger finger for that. But I might be wrong. Again, I haven't built that kit. 2 of Runner F from the Vidar for a bunch more frame parts for things like the side skirts. You see these very large parts to use with the refills for the burst saber, as well as a bunch of armor parts for things like the legs. Finally, moving on from frame runners, because again, all of those were for frame parts. Here are runners G1 and G2, multicolored runners for the Vidar in 4 different colors. Well, 3 different colors for each runner, but in total they combine for 4 different colors. G1 is going to have this white section unique to it. G2 is going to have this clear pink section unique to it. So, of course, we're going to be having a ton of our armor parts here in this light blue color for parts like the skirts, arms, legs, torso, etc. We're going to be having red parts down here for the large thrusters on the fronts of the legs. Always great to see these being color separated. We're going to be seeing a bunch of black parts for auxiliary, I guess, kind of in between frame and armor parts, and as well as a bunch of black accent parts for things like vents and stuff like that, as you can see with things like the skirts up here. The white parts are going to be a bunch of accent parts, as well as the sitting and standing pilot figure for Vidar right there. And then we're going to be having clear pink here for parts for, I believe, things like the Ahab reactor, the scope for the rifle, and the eyes/head camera. So, always nice to see. Runner H1 here in black, going to be a bunch of accent armor parts here for things like vent details, and I think that's the head, I'm not quite sure, and the skirts as well as other parts. Runner H2 here going to be parts for the rifle. Again, a little disappointed this is just 2 halves of sandwiched together, but it looks like there is going to be some stuff that layer on top, so we'll see how good that looks once I've built the kit. Runner I, you get 2 of in this black here for a bunch of accessories as well as armor parts. You see parts there for things like leg armor, as well as parts for the burst saber, I guess, reload racks in the side skirts, as well as the parts for the handgun up here. Runner J here in the light blue uses the main armor color for a bunch of auxiliary armor parts, including parts for the head. I think these are the skirts of the torso and for the V-fin. And last but certainly not least, we have runners K here, which we get 2 of. These are just going to be all of the blades for the burst saber, for placing it both on the burst saber as well as refills inside of the side skirts. So, with all that out of the way, I will see you after the build. Alright, welcome back. Here's the Master Grade Gundam Vidar, snap-built, panel line, decaled up with Delphi Water Select decals, and sort of top-coated. I say sort of because I messed up pretty bad top-coating this. Like I mentioned, like you might have seen in the community post I made a couple of days ago, it's been raining near non-stop where I live, so I haven't really had the opportunity to top-coat things, but the rain stopped, so I top-coated it. I unfortunately forgot to check the humidity, and it was way too humid, so the part of Vidar that was closest to the window, that in the room that I top coat in, instead of the top coat kind of settling normally, it instead formed this very flaky, gross white layer on top that I had to clean up with rubbing alcohol. It's still very humid where I live, so I haven't had the opportunity to top coat it again, so if the finish seems uneven, or if you see parts that look a little like dusty or kind of pale or something, that's because I messed up and the top coat did not kind of set normally. All that out of the way, this is a pretty impressive Master Grade. Getting right into the build. The frame, as I mentioned in the unboxing section, looked like it was going to be more involved than a typical Master Grade, and it was. There were a lot of like kind of movable articulating piston details all over the frame that move as you articulate the kit. If you've ever built anything using the ARC 72 2.0 frame, you know the first thing you build, those 2 pistons in the kind of, I guess next to the neck of that shift as you articulate the shoulders. Imagine those all over the frame. There are a bunch of them in like the elbows, in the tops of the thighs, you can see as this spins around, in the heels, in the sides of the torso. There in the backpack, or kind of like in the back right before the backpack, but there are these articulating piston details all over the place that are really, really cool and help add a ton of detail to this frame. In addition, the detail in the frame is very, very impressive with a ton of part separation. This frame is made up of a ton of different parts, all of them sculpted great. All of this kind of contributes to a very, I guess, unorthodox build. It's a little bit different in that it's extremely frame heavy, as opposed to other kits which have more of a balance in the time you spend assembling the frame and the armor. This is mostly frame. You spend comparatively very little time building the armor. Again, the only kit that's kind of close to this would be the Master Grade Barbatos from, like, what, 2019 or so. And this kit does improve on that in a few ways in the frame. The Barbatos is kind of a little bit infamous in that while the frame is very, very detailed and nice looking, it has a big reliance on C-clips that have a pretty big tendency to break as you articulate. Notably in the feet for toe articulation and in the shoulders, the C-clips there are known to be fragile. Here they kind of adjusted a little bit. The feet design in the Vidar is completely different because of the Hunter's Edge weapons there, so that does not use a C-clip for toe articulation, so no problem there. In the shoulders, the C-clip that was just kind of part of the shoulder assembly before is now a separate part that slots into a hole, so as you rotate the shoulder, it's actually like the C-clip is on a peg in a socket that can rotate. So that puts less stress on the C-clip itself as you rotate the shoulder. So hopefully that should make the C-clips in the shoulders less prone to breaking, but only time will tell. I've only had this kit built for like almost a week at this point, so I can't really say. I haven't done any like kind of stress tests on it. I don't really plan to, but apart from that, the build is quite nice, so not really much else to say besides that, what I've already said about the frame. Also, one thing to mention in terms of stability, you might notice the Vidar seems a little tilted. It was very hard to get it kind of stable in this kind of neutral standing pose because of the small surface area of the feet themselves. The way the torso, you can see it slants back. That's just built into the frame. You can't articulate that part. And the backpack and the side skirts. This kit's a little top and back heavy in terms of the balance, so it was kind of hard to get it even in this kind of pose, let alone in I guess, a balanced, symmetrical, neutral standing pose. It's always going to look a little awkward and tilted. This is definitely a kit you're going to want to pose on an action base, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, this kit does tend to lean backwards, so just keep that in mind if you decide to get this kit. In terms of aesthetics then, this is where this kit is going to be a bit polarizing, because it's an IBO design, and the series overall is very polarizing in terms of its designs. Like, for example, the Barbatos, I'm not a big fan of. It's one of my less liked protagonist Gundam designs, which is why I put off building the Barbatos until now. I only really picked it up because I heard the frame was such a unique experience that I kind of had to get it just to see what it was like for myself. But the Vidar is a little bit different. I do like how this looks more than Barbatos. It's a lot more interesting geometrically, and I think the way they decided to portray the Vidar here with all of these details poking through, you see all of these like kind of stripes in the shoulders, that's frame poking through. You see these black vents in the knees, frame poking through. The color separated thrusters in the legs. You see here the front skirts, the way it's broken up with these light gray details here and the red. All of it's quite interesting, and it makes the Vidar a lot more appealing to me than something like the Barbatos, which is a little more monotone. Like, it is broken up a bit by those like metallic pink, I guess, like almost what looks almost like a power symbol. But here, I think this is a lot more interesting with the way the frame pokes through, and just the much more varied geometry of the Vidar. It's a much more angular design that I think is very interesting, especially in the lower part of the Vidar. The top part's very kind of typical for IBO designs with that extremely thin midsection leading to this super hourglass figure, which again is a little weird. It's a little odd for all of this, like, for the connector part between the top and the bottom of the kit to be this very thin midsection. The plated silver piston parts do serve to make it a little more aesthetically interesting, but it is still a little weird geometrically. In terms of color accuracy then, as you might expect, it is basically perfect. I did do a tiny bit of painting, but that is only in the face here. I don't know how you can see that, but around the eyes, it was in like a frame gray, so I just painted that in with a black Gundam marker to give the impression that that whole section is a little hollow and the eye cameras are the only parts that should be showing. Apart from that, this kit is pretty much perfectly color accurate out of the box. And getting into where I use the very small color correcting stickers here, I used almost all of them except for these alternative stickers for the eyes because, like I mentioned earlier, I painted the borders around them in black instead of using the sticker for it. So stickers 1 and 2 are going to be the metallic pink eye stickers right there. Stickers 3 and 4 are going to be the eye stickers I did not use. Sticker 5 is going to be the rear head camera back there. I don't know how you can see, that's a little recessed, but it's a metallic pink sticker there. Sticker 6 is going to be a plain foil sticker that goes behind the scope for the 110mm rifle right here. There is a pink clear part that goes in front of it that does look quite nice, with the foil sticker kind of reflecting light through it. Sticker 6 is going to be very hard to see. It's going to be in the cockpit. There's two kind of chairs you can use that you put Vidar in. One of them has the Alana Vijnana System Type E activated, and the other one does not. The activated one has two kind of black and pink rectangular stickers that you can't really see, because even when the cockpit's open, it's really hard. It's really hard to see. It doesn't show up on camera, and I can barely see it in person. So it's in there just as a, I guess, a neat nod to the mechanics of the system, the mechanics of the mobile suit in the show. You can't really see it in person. Sticker 7 is going to be this large pink and black metallic sticker for the third Ahab reactor in the backpack there. There is a pink clear part that goes over that makes it look quite cool, but underneath it is a color correcting sticker. And sticker 9 you get two of. They're going to be in the extra burst saber blades. They go on the bottom here to represent the kind of base of the saber blades after they've been purged, so you can kind of just display it on the ground next to the Vidar, showing that it's already like used one of the blades. I'll try and show it off in the posing section. I don't know if I'm going to get it to be able to fit in frame. If I can't, I'll let you know. So overall, the Vidar is an extremely interesting model aesthetically, although it may be a little polarizing because of how weird the IBO kind of design language is in general, but it is pretty much a perfect representation of the Vidar, being nearly entirely color accurate, with only minor kind of color correcting stickers needed to make it fully color accurate. For a quick size comparison, here's the Master Grade Vidar next to a standard size high grade being the High Grade Blue Destiny Unit 1, and a standard size Master Grade being the Master Grade Gem Sniper 2 White Dingo team. As you can see, the Vidar is a bit tall for a Master Grade. It is about an inch taller head height than the Master Grade Gem Sniper 2, and keep in mind that this is going to take up a lot more depth-wise space, especially if you swing the side skirts back like you want to show it reloading the burst saber, as you'll see in the accessory section in a moment. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This is a bit of a tall kit compared to a standard Master Grade. So for accessories, here's the Master Grade Vidar with everything it comes with. Starting as usual with the hand options. These are of course going to be swappable finger style hands. You are with the thumb being on a ball joint, no point of articulation in the middle. So of course you will get the two closed fists. I have the kit that I have on the kit right now. You will also get two nice open expressive hands here with the very typical kind of very sharp claw-like hands of the IBO Gundams. You will get two standard holding hands for using with the burst saber. And of course you will get two trigger finger hands for using with the handguns or the 110mm rifle. You will of course get an action base adapter for showing the Vidar in the air. You will get the standing pilot figure of Vidar himself, or I think his name's like Galileo or something. He's the guy who piloted the Kamaris and the Kamaris Trooper, so this is just him disguised. It's nice that we get a standing pilot figure, especially since some modern Master Grades just completely eschew the pilot figure itself, so it's nice that we have one. For some pretty unique handheld weapons, you will get these two handguns here. They're very simple. They're three parts. They're two halves sandwiched together and one part on the top for the blowback mechanism, which I'll show you in a moment. But the two halves kind of sandwiched together in a pretty nice way. There's a bit of a seam line that like runs down the middle, but it's not all that noticeable most of the time, and it does look quite nice. The sculpt is quite good. There's plenty of surface detail here, and like I mentioned earlier and shown on the box, there is a blowback mechanism where you can just slide this part of the handgun back to pose the Vidar as if it is like in the middle of firing the handguns, which is pretty cool to see. You will get the 110mm rifle here, which is a cool enough looking weapon. It has a nice sculpt. It is a bit thicker than normal because while there are two halves sandwiched together, there is a black part in the middle to give it a bit of extra thickness and heft, as well as color separating all of these really nice black inner details that run along the rifle, which is really quite nice and looks great. Of course, the magazine is going to be removable, so you can pose the Vidar reloading the gun or something like that. You don't get any spare magazines. Apart from that, not really any articulation to speak of on the rifle. It just looks pretty cool. You will get, as I mentioned earlier, these two purged beams, these two purged burst saber blades. So you can just kind of scatter these around the Vidar to pose it as if it's already purged some of the blades, or you can just kind of have this, you can have it impaling another mobile suit if you want to show the Vidar in the middle of an attack. And then of course you will get the burst saber itself, which I'm talking about last because of how cool the reload mechanism is. So as you can see, all of the blades for the burst saber are going to be in the side skirts, which is accurate to the Vidar, but the way you reload them is pretty cool. So you stick the burst saber handle into one of the slots, let's say this one, all right, and then once it's in there, you can slide this whole part of the side skirt back, which is kind of hard for me to do on camera. Okay, the sliding mechanism was pretty jammed in there after the top coat, so to replace the burst saber blade, you can jam the handle in like so, and then this whole section will slide down, and then you can take out your burst saber with a new blade attached. It's a pretty cool method of replacing the blades. Just be careful to not bend them, because especially at the end, they are a bit prone to that if you just try to jam it in like so, grab it by the base and shove it in. So apart from that, you have a pretty cool, essentially thrusting sword that you can pose the Vidar with, which you'll see in the posing section. So that's always cool to see. So pretty much a complete accessory spread, everything you would expect the Vidar to have, it does. So getting into articulation then, starting with the head, it can look up very far, which is always nice to see, and the neck is going to be on a C-clip hinge, so it can tilt up and down like so. This is another C-clip that's I'm a little concerned about being a break risk if you articulate it a little too roughly, so just be careful. It can look down into its own chest, which is nice to see. You can get some very nice side to side tilt, and of course Vidar's head can 360 about a ball joint, all usual stuff. All right, in the shoulders then, you will have a forward shoulder swing that's pretty alright. Just be careful you don't pop the shoulder armor off. This is demonstrating what I said earlier, where the C-clip is on a separate joint so that you don't stress it too much as you articulate the shoulder, which is nice. The shoulder can articulate independently of the arm to allow the arm to go, if you move this articulatable flap, you can get a fairly high arm raise, nowhere near last shooting, but well above 90 degrees, which is nice. Full 360 rotation as you would expect. Rotation in the upper bicep, a double joint, will give about a 135 degree bend. You do see a nice articulating piston coming out of the elbow when you do that. The wrist is going to be on this hinge mechanism that allows it to tilt in and out quite far, and to tilt back if you want to have it like pointing the burst saber at you, like so, which is really cool. It's nice to see that they included that extra articulation there for that. And of course the thumb is going to be on a ball joint, which will do ball joint things. In the torso then, this is where there's a lot of the articulation is going to be, with these pistons there showing it off. For ab crunch, you will get a quite nice ab crunch forward, but again, because of the way the torso kind of slants backwards, it doesn't look all that impressive. What does look very impressive is this back crunch. This is insane. It's a bit unfortunate that it's able to do this, given how kind of back heavy the top half of the Vidar is, but it can't do that. Just be careful you don't kind of flex the torso too violently, otherwise these pistons can and will pop out, and they're a bit of annoying to get back in. You will, of course, you will be able to rotate the torso. It is on a peg, which can 360. Just be careful you don't like bump into anything. For side-to-side articulation, you get an okay side-to-side ab crunch. Just be careful again you don't pop the pistons out. For the cockpit hatch, like I showed off earlier, this top part will just slide down, and you can see Vidar in there. For the backpack then, this is also a part that you will articulate accidentally as you handle the Vidar, but these two parts on the side are on ball joints, so they will do ball joint things as you would expect. This little thruster / vent part in the backpack can articulate a tiny bit, but nothing too crazy. In the waist then, there is a bit of a hip drop mechanism. Each leg is on an individual kind of ring on a peg, so each leg can kind of come down like so that's nice to see. For the skirts are of course on separate ball joints. They can flip fully upwards 180 degrees vertically. The side skirts are on this rotation mechanism, so they can swing about as you would expect and rotate and all that goodness. And of course they can slide back as I showed off in the accessory section. The back skirts, in a bit of an unusual bit of articulation here, they can flip backwards to allow for a better back kick and to allow for easier mounting of the action base on this rail down here. In the legs then, for front kicks, if you use the hip drop mechanism, you will get just over 90 degrees. For side kicks, if you move the side skirts out of the way, you will get just over 90 degrees. As you saw there, this thruster is these back thrusters on the legs are a bit prone to popping off. They are on C-clips, so again, that's another part that may be a break risk, but I'm not exactly sure given how kind of infrequently you're going to be articulating those thrusters. And for back kicks, you will get just about 90 degrees, so pretty decent kick articulation in the legs. Of course, you will get rotation in the upper thigh, not all the way though, before it collides with the waist. A full double bend in the knee. I don't know if you could see that, but like as advertised on the box, that rear thruster does have a bit of a slide mechanism to allow for a full bend in the knee, just over 90 degrees, which is kind of to be expected that it will have some collision issues given how wide these thrusters come out. In the feet then, you will get about a 45 degree pivot to either side. The entire foot will pivot forward about that far. It'll pivot downward quite far, and then you will get some side to side, but nothing crazy. There is some toe separation, but to use it, you will have to activate the Hunter's Edge, which just kind of blips out like so, and then you can get some downward toe bend like so. So overall, articulation on the Vidar is quite good. You do miss a bit of the bend in the elbows and knees, but that is to be expected with given how kind of thick those parts of the armor are. But all of those pistons articulating with the plated silver finish looks quite nice. The articulation in the torso in particular is a little bit unfortunate given how far back it tends to go with how kind of top back heavy this kit is, but we'll see the articulation in action in some poses. Alright, so getting the Vidar into a spin here in a standing pose where it's readying to thrust with the burst saber into a target. As you might expect from this design, like I mentioned earlier, the surface area of the feet is quite small, and coupled with the bit of minor balance issues that Vidar has, this kit really can't pull off a running and gunning pose, so if you wanted it for that, you're going to be a little disappointed. One other thing I forgot to mention earlier, I probably threw it up on screen in text form because I forgot to say it verbally, but Vidar's a kit that can actually mount all of its weapons on its person at all times. The rifle can clip onto one of the slots in the side skirts. The burst saber handle can just attach to one of the blades inside of the side skirts, and the front skirts actually double as holsters for the pistols, which is pretty cool. This is a pretty cool pose that the Vidar can do on the ground. It looks a little bit better in the air, where it can be a bit more dynamic with its torso and legs while still remaining balanced, because again, the balance on the ground isn't the greatest and it's a bit of an issue, but this is a very cool pose, and you'll see it later in the conclusion section, but the Vidar's kind of wrist articulation that allows it to directly point the burst saber at the viewer, no matter like what kind of pose you're doing, is a really cool touch that they gave this kit. It's a really nice piece of articulation that I honestly wasn't really expecting. So it's very cool. The burst saber is a fairly unique option. You don't really see like thrusting or fencing swords that often in Gundam, so it's very cool that the Vidar has it and can use it. And this pose is definitely something I might consider posing it on the shelf, albeit in a kind of modified form where it's in the air and it can look a little more dynamic, but overall, very cool pose. So to cover all my bases, here's Vidar on the ground shooting the 110mm rifle up at an airborne target. This isn't the greatest, namely because, one, Vidar doesn't really look great crouching. It can do it very easily. One thing I learned doing this posing section is that the Master Grade Vidar is a very easy poser. It just pulls off most of what you would want it to very, very easily. The only thing you really need to kind of keep in mind is if you're having it on the ground, keeping it balanced, because again, the narrow feet make it a little difficult to maintain balance, but in this crouching pose where you can have the side skirts double as extra legs to stabilize Vidar, it looks pretty good, and the actual right arm holding the 110mm rifle firing upwards does look very natural holding it. Normally these rifles with stocks and stuff run into an issue where the wrist articulation is a little bit lacking, and that means that the kind of stock of the rifle is going to be running into the arm, or it's going to look really awkward, or you can't really quite like kind of tuck it underneath the arm in a way that looks natural. This kit can pull it off with aplomb. It looks great on the right arm. The left arm, unfortunately, you can tell that this kit really wasn't designed to hold the rifle with two hands, because the open expressive hands really don't look good supporting the rifle. This clearly isn't a case of something like the high-grade D Gundam First, where the open expressive hand was designed to also double as a weapon support hand. This kit really can't pull it off. It looks awkward no matter how you pose it. So yeah, well, the 110mm rifle is a very cool option, and I would consider posing Vidar using it. I really wouldn't do it crouching, and I wouldn't do it two-handed. It definitely looks a lot better one-handed, which you'll see in the conclusion section. So getting the Vidar into the air here, doing a bit of a unique pose that I can pull off, showing off some of its gimmicks, reloading the burst saber, as you can see there from the side skirts being articulated slightly down the rail, and in its offhand, firing the handgun back at a target while it relocates to a safer position. This is a very cool pose and definitely shows off a lot of what Vidar is capable of. It looks really great in the air in motion from a lot of the kind of skeletal aspects of the Gundam frames and IBO. Those frames look quite good in motion, and that's where Vidar really shines. It doesn't look its greatest on the ground, and this pose kind of demonstrates that. It looks its best when you don't have to worry about balancing the kit on the ground, where you can let the legs just kind of play out and express themselves, where the lankiness of the proportions can really shine, where the Vidar can kind of contort itself in a way where the kind of where the metallic plated piston details are exposed and give splashes of shine all throughout the kit. Where the handguns also look great, where you can demonstrate the nimbleness and lightness of the weapon as the Vidar's fired, like snapping back to shoot behind it as it's moving. This is an excellent pose, shows off a lot of what the Vidar is capable of in terms of gimmicks, and is definitely something I would consider posing this kit doing on the shelf. This is a fantastic pose. So in conclusion, as the Vidar spins around here, as I try to recreate one of the kicking poses with the Hunter's Edge feet weapons that Bandai put in some of the promo material for the Master Grade Vidar, the Master Grade Vidar is a very cool Master Grade kit. It's a bit of a shame that Bandai's dialing back Master Grade releases lately, because this may be the only Master Grade you'll be able to get stateside this year in terms of new releases, depending on what the delay is between the Barbatos Lupus releasing in Japan in November and getting here, and whether or not stores will be able to fulfill pre-orders by the holiday season. This may be the only new Master Grade we see this year, and if that's the case, it's a bit of a shame, because a lot of what this kit is capable of in terms of articulation, in terms of aesthetics, with the frame poking through all of these nice details that would traditionally either need to be shaded in with a panel liner or would be recreated through color correcting stickers, is just done through the frame poking through. All of these really nice molded geometric details are excellent, and something I would really like to see in more Master Grade kits, but unfortunately Bandai's really scaling back Master Grade releases. Maybe that'll change. I remember something about them developing a new Gunpla factory, and maybe when that's done they'll start ramping up releases again. Getting into Vidar itself, the build is a bit unique, especially if you haven't built the Master Grade Barbatos yet. There's nothing really quite like it, the way how complex the frame is, the way everything layers together, the way you assemble all these piston details that kind of shift and articulate as you move the kit to show off the inner workings of the frame. All of this mechanical detail is awesome to see, and coupled with the extremely angular geometric details in the armor, all of it comes together to make this super dynamic model that looks really great in motion, and especially looks great in the air when you can have things play out and not have to worry about balance, which is pretty much the only downside I have for this kit besides the price, but we'll get into that in a moment. This kit really has problems balancing on the ground, so it's a bit of a shame they didn't include an action base with it. I would definitely recommend you use something like an action base 4 or a 5 with this kit. It looks much better in the air than on the ground. It doesn't have the problems where it's kind of tipping over because of how thin the feet are and how kind of top-back heavy this kit is when it's standing. Besides those balance issues, it's fairly sturdy. It's an excellent build. In terms of aesthetics, I went over it earlier, but all of the geometry, all of those frame details poking through the armor, all of it is excellent. It is essentially perfectly color accurate. The only thing you might have to paint in is, if you don't want to use the color correcting stickers with the black borders around the eyes, just paint in the kind of border around the clear eye pieces that it slots into in black. It's a separate piece, so it's very easy to do. And apart from that, this kit aesthetically is essentially a perfect representation of Vidar in the Master Grade, with much more detail than the line art has, which is always a nice touch to see. In terms of accessories, this has literally everything you could want with the Vidar, with the 110mm rifle, the handguns, the burst saber, the spare sabers with articulation gimmicks and the side skirts for reloading the burst saber, which is really cool, the Hunter's Edge in the feet. All of it is included, and all of it's excellent. Again, the only thing that might be missing is an action base, but that's pretty common across Master Grades and not really something to hold against this kit. In terms of articulation, this kit is excellent and can pull off pretty much every pose you would want it to very easily. I was extremely surprised with how easily this kit poses, and I didn't neglected to mention it earlier, but the hands hold on to all the weapons perfectly. Normally that's the biggest problem I have when posing Master Grade kits, is getting the hands and fingers to cooperate holding the weapons, but this kit had no problems. The weapons just never fell out, never felt loose, and this kit just holds everything amazingly. So it's an excellent articulator and a very easy poser. But the one problem that's kind of sticking out is the price, because I got this kit for around $65, which is what you would expect from a more premium Master Grade that includes a lot more than this kit does. I don't know if this kit is worth the extra 20% in terms of price over something like the Barbatos, but if you can stomach the extra cost, it's more than worth it. Would I recommend this kit? Absolutely. This is an excellent modern Master Grade, and it just really shows that it's a shame that Bandai's scaling back Master Grade releases, because if we got more of these, I would be more than happy because of how excellent of a model this is, and I really hope that Bandai incorporates a lot of the features from this kit in terms of articulation and detail and all of that into more model kits in the future. So that was my review of the Master Grade Vidar. What do you think of this kit? Let me know in the comments below. If you like reviews like these, please subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a like, and I'll see you next time with my review of the high grade Gundam FSD with long-range prototype beam rifle. I'll see you then.